Good morning. We've made it to Friday, August the 5th, 2016. Reading from My Utmost for His Highest. The Baffling Call of God. Luke 18:31 and 34. And all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man shall be accomplished. And they understood none of these things. God called Jesus Christ to what seemed unmitigated disaster. Jesus Christ called his disciples to see him put to death. He led every one of them to the place where their hearts were broken. Jesus Christ's life was an absolute failure from every standpoint but God's. But what seemed failure from man's standpoint was a tremendous triumph from God's, because God's purpose is never man's purpose. There comes the baffling call of God in our lives also. The call of God can never be stated explicitly. It is implicit. The call of God is like the call of the sea. No one hears it but the one who has the nature of the sea in him. It cannot be stated definitely what the call of God is too, because his call is to be in comradeship with himself for his own purposes, and the test is to believe that God knows what he is after. The things that happen do not happen by chance. They happen entirely in the decree of God. God is working out his purposes. If we are in communion with God and recognize that he is taking us into his purposes, we shall no longer try to find out what his purposes are. As we go on in the Christian life, it gets simpler, because we are less inclined to say, "Now why did God allow this and that?" Behind the whole thing lies the compelling of God. There's a divinity that shapes our ends. A Christian is one who trusts the wits and the wisdom of God, and not his own wits. If we have a purpose of our own, it destroys the simplicity and the leisureliness which ought to characterize the children of God. Words of wisdom from Oswald Chambers. He shall glorify me. Seeing is never believing. We interpret what we see in the light of what we believe. Faith is confidence in God before you see God emerging. Therefore, the nature of faith is that it must be tried. Two hymns this morning, both by Johnson Oatman Jr., Alone with God and The Last Mile of the Way. Alone with God, 1904. When storms of life are round me beating, when rough the path that I have trod, within my closet door retreating, I love to be alone with God, alone with God. The world forbid, and alone with God. Oh, blessed retreat, alone with God, and in him hid, and to hold with him communion sweet. What though the clouds have gathered o'er me? What though I pass beneath the rod? God's perfect will there lies before me, when I am thus alone with God, alone with God, the world forbid, hopeless retreat, alone with God, and in Him hidden, to hold with Him communion sweet. 'Tis there I find new strength for duty, as o'er the sands of time I plod. I see the King in all His beauty, while resting there alone with God. Alone with God, the world forbidden, alone with God, hopeless retreat, alone with God, and in Him hidden, to hold with Him communion sweet. And when I see the moment nearing, when I shall sleep beneath the sod, when time with me is disappearing, I want to be alone with God. Alone with God, the world forbidden, alone with God, oh blessed retreat, alone with God, and in Him hidden, to hold with Him communion sweet. The Last Mile of the Way, 1908. If I walk in the pathway of duty, if I work till the close of the day, I shall see the great King in His beauty, when I've gone the last mile of the way. When I've gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day, and I know there are joys that await me, when I've gone the last mile of the way. If for Christ I proclaim the glad story, if I seek for His sheep gone astray, I am sure He will show me His glory, when I've gone the last mile of the way. When I've gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day, and I know there are joys that await me, when I've gone the last mile of the way. Here the dearest of ties we must sever, tears of sorrow are seen every day, but no sickness, no sighing forever, when I've gone the last mile of the way. When I've gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day, and I know there are joys that await me, when I've gone the last mile of the way. And if here I have earnestly striven, and have tried all His will to obey, 'twill enhance all the rapture of heaven, when I've gone the last mile of the way. When I've gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day, and I know there are joys that await me when I've gone the last mile of the way. Father, forgive me for not realizing that I'm called to abide in you always, not just when times are easy, not when I'm fresh and awake and alert, but on the last mile of the way, the last hours of the day. Father, you have called us to be your own, to be a bondservant. The storms of life are beating. The path we're on is rough, but we do not have to wait till the end to receive heaven. Father, I pray we choose life and peace and joy today. Let us be a source of joy and encouragement to each other, and learn to be of good cheer in the midst of this troubling world. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.